Dr. Corsi, I think people might be curious as to why we've chosen to already declare victory over coronavirus. How are you today, Doctor?
I'm good. I'm good. And so far, avoiding the coronavirus in lockdown.
Absolutely. So
It's a unusual experience I never thought we'd ever go through. But here we are.
it's really totally different than anything that anybody could have imagined. I mean, it's vastly different than 9/11, although I think equally or possibly even more damaging. What prompted you to say that Trump has already won?
Well, I think as we go through the analysis of this, you're going to see that the virus has already peaked. I think most of the world it's peaked. Oh, yes, we have to turn off the. Hold on. There we go.
No problem. And the good news this week, Dr. Corsi, is that your awesome website, CorsiNation.com, is back in action, and fans of Corsi Nation can visit, and it's really well designed. Congratulations, Dr. Corsi. Looks great.
I,
You got full
I'm
screen
very,
video.
yeah, I'm very pleased with it. If you scroll down, you can see we have the articles. We'll be publishing,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think, some very important articles. And if you continue to scroll down, you keep going a little farther, you'll see uh, some of the current videos. There's some of the most recent videos we've done as podcasts,
And the books?
and also three books. Those are my recent books. The Little Red Book of Democrat Socialist Lies is a new one. It's a brand new. It's only available here as a ebook, and
Nice.
so therefore I just got that published right now with Bishop E.W. Jackson. Bishop Jackson and I have created this stand against communism, and this book is going to be I think, our mainstay in communicating that message. Then, as you go through the website, you'll see we've got podcasts and videos all listed. So you can, the top, you can click those and you'll go right to the page where you can see where you can get the various. If you click in, for instance, SoundCloud or iHeart, it'll take you right to my page where you can download the podcasts.
Really
And
nicely
the
done.
same with the videos. We have for our sponsor, Gold, a page where we're going to really feature the gold this year. There's quite a bit I want to do with gold this year because we're, I think, going to see the fiat dollar. So there's newsletters you can sign up there. We have a section on the border which features TerraBlock. I've had a contract with TerraBlock to really get their protection system in place. The gold system has, there you go, that explains all of that. And then finally in the books, you can go to the books, and I've decided to sell the copies of my books that I have from the books I've written. I wrote new descriptions of each book and what they were about when I wrote them, and I'll sign the books and send them to you. The price will include shipping. So this is for signed copies of the books that I have that remain, and when they're gone, that's probably the copies I have. So this is a nice way to get a permanent signature on the page, which is either my name or an inscription signed to you as you wish. And it goes through a cart and all. We've worked very hard to get this up. And I think this site's going to have a great platform for years to come on which we can convey a lot of information.
Absolutely. The hard work really shows, Dr. Corsi. Congratulations. It's a beautiful website. And now when people want information about what is going on in Corsi Nation, they can just go to CorsiNation.com. It's one unified repository for all things Dr. Corsi, and all of our listeners are going to be very interested to check that out. So, Dr. Corsi, the economy is still in limbo. People are still not on the streets. New York City is a virtual ghost town. Help us understand the victory that you've seen.
Well, see, all viruses, you get these projections, which have, there are 80,000 people going to die in New York City, or they say that instead of million people going to be sick or dying in London. Well, these things don't happen. It's the same kind of projections you get mathematically. They're just exponential projections. They start to say, oh, it's doubled. Well, you were only at 100, now it's gone to 200. So doubling is easy in those small numbers. But when you get projections like this, they just keep going up and up and up and off the chart. So pretty soon you're at 1 million deaths. Well, same with global warming, or the planet's going to warm up and the ice is going to melt in the poles and we're going to have sea rising. Well, it didn't happen. And again, what you see is a virus. No virus follows an exponential curve, and we've got historical viruses and plagues going back 2,000 years that can be studied. A virus is a living entity, and it lives off the host entity. It enters your body to live off your body, and that's in effect a self-defeating strategy, because eventually the virus has killed its own source of food. So it's not going to last forever, and viruses tend to peak. They tend to peak, wear out, and die. And so in a very short period of time, and the mathematics I'm looking at, which come out of Israel, I think they're far more sophisticated in terms of their mathematical modeling, studying individual countries, including China, and taking into account that China may not be reporting correctly, the virus seems to have a 4 to 6 week lifespan from where it begins to infect people and to where it reaches its peak and begins diminishing. So even if we did nothing, this virus wouldn't kill everybody. It would eventually die out. And the idea about the entire population everybody's going to get it, 80% of the people in New York are going to have coronavirus. No, it's not going to happen. And certainly the deaths which we have so far, despite all of the panic, are still under 2,000, which is something like 0.00 some percentage of the 350 million people in the United States. We did a comparison. I was on my podcast this morning. The CDC had projected for influenza there would be between 23,000 deaths and 50,000 deaths this year. And the flu season's just about over, and the numbers seem to be about 23,000 deaths from influenza. And we're nowhere near that with this coronavirus, and it is already peaking throughout most of the country. You tell that because the rate of infection slows down, the rate of death. You're still getting increasing numbers, but at a much slower pace. And that's a good indication that the virus is actually in the process of dying of its own accord.
Now, I don't know, Dr. Corsi, if you've had time to see any of the broadcasts that I've been doing. I know you're very busy, but everything I've been seeing around New York, and I've been going to some of the largest hospitals in the city, I've been to 4 of them, it totally contradicts what we're seeing in the news. I mean, this is CNBC telling us that New York hospitals battle coronavirus as hundreds of patients flood in. But what I've observed is no lines like this. This is people who are lining up to test in Elmhurst. Well, we don't know if they're coronavirus patients or just people who read CNBC and get freaked out and then go over to the hospital when they announce that there's free tests. But I can tell you that outside of New York Presbyterian, outside of Mount Sinai, outside of NYU Langone, outside of Bellevue Hospital, there was nobody, Dr. Corsi. In fact, I saw EMTs hanging out smoking cigarettes, of all things, telling me that they didn't know if they had seen any coronavirus patients. They assumed, perhaps, based on the symptoms of coughing.
Well, and that's you got Governor Cuomo saying we need hundreds of thousands of ventilators and we need emergency tents set up by the military to handle all the sick. It's the sky is falling, and then the sky doesn't fall. And that's the problem, is that we're going to have a lot of these new special facilities that are not going to have any patients. You're going to have ventilators that will be saved for the next time. That's good. But it's very different than in Wuhan or in Italy. In Wuhan, which was the original epicenter where the virus was the strongest and did the most damage, and also the Chinese health system was not prepared or politically motivated to save the people. In Italy, you've had conditions of a lot of the factories up in Lombardy by Milan have had Chinese workers in these clothing factories and leather factories producing high quality luxury goods for the name brands in Italy. And those workers are mainly, many of them from Wuhan. So the virus came over. Also, the Italy is, I think, suffered extremely badly under the euro and the EU. The EU did not help. And basically, Italy is now running towards becoming a third world country with its socialized medicine and the vast flow of immigrants from northern Africa. Italy doesn't look like Italy anymore at all. And that it's not as surprising to me that Italy, and it's got the oldest population in Europe. Italy was totally unprepared and had a far greater incidence of infection to begin with. You see in the United States, you've got New York, you've got New Orleans, and Seattle look like they will be cluster epicenters, and we'll still have some of those while the virus dies out. They're all port cities. They're all where there's international travel. New York has a substantial Chinese population, as you know, Jason, and these are factors which make the virus more virulent in New York, Seattle, and New Orleans. But throughout much of the country, there are relatively few patients, and this virus is actually, I'd say, about 98% survivable, even in the high risk ages. For instance, people over 80 years old or people with a respiratory or other physical problem, I still think the virus is 80% survivable. So this is not going to, it's not going to kill huge, this is not 1918. It's not an influenza virus where we have antiseptics, we have medicines. We're finding that even some of these very common and inexpensive medications like this hydroxychloroquine is doing quite well to combat the virus, and through Donald Trump's efforts has now gotten onto the CDC website as one of the treatments that is being recommended for COVID-19, with the CDC saying nothing has been specifically tested against COVID-19. It's too new, so there is no recommended FDA-approved treatment for COVID-19 because nothing's been tested against it. But these remedies work.
Sorry.
Yes.
Let me ask you this, because there's so much just horrendous reporting going on right now. It was reported that someone who had heard President Trump's praise of this hydroxychloroquine died from it. That was the initial report, was that the guy died. And even in this CNN piece, they're telling us that the guy died because he used a product that's used to treat fish aquariums that contains this chemical, but is not a medicine based on this chemical. Yet here they're showing us a photograph with pills, and they're juxtaposing it with this headline. This is going to leave a lot of people thinking that that pill could kill you. How could they be so irresponsible?
Well, completely irresponsible reporting. First of all, I'm not even sure it happened. But if you were, dumb enough to go to the internet and buy this hydroxychloroquine, and it was in fish tank, well, the formulation of the hydroxychloroquine in a fish tank is fundamentally different than it would be in a medicine. There's other ingredients. It's meant to clear the water in a fish tank. You clearly don't want to put that in your system any more than you'd want to take, any other thing you could get off the shelf for other applications and start drinking it. You can't drink disinfectant that you use to clean your floor.
Right.
It's not going to work.
Well, you could, but you're going to wind up in the hospital.
Well, you're going to wind up very, very sick. I mean, the point is, if you're going to take any medication, including this hydroxychloroquine, which is it's been around since 1945. It treats malaria. It's extremely well known. Don't self-medicate. Go to a doctor.
Yes.
Have the doctor examine you and determine whether you've got any conditions that might make the taking of a particular medicine not recommended, to advise you on the strengths of the medicine to take, the frequency. You've got to get a diagnosis. You can't just start saying, well, I heard this on television, so I'm going to grab some and I'll self-medicate.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
it's
really pretty foolish.
certainly not Donald Trump's fault that there's foolish people out there in the United States. I mean, what I heard when he was talking about it was that this is a drug that's well tolerated, has been widely used for many, many years. It's well understood by physicians, and he's recommending an off-label use. This is very common. 21st Century 3D used to do a lot of work for pharmaceutical clients, and when the things were approved for off-label treatments, like there was some arthritis medication that they decided was going to help people with Crohn's disease. They love that because it's something that's already in the marketplace and it's like an additional kind of approval of the product. So it's very helpful to patients.
There is no product today specifically with an FDA approval for COVID-19.
Yeah.
Now, because it's too new to do it just showed up in maybe November of 2019, just a few months ago. It's going to take time to develop a vaccine because while there are a number of very promising vaccines in the works, they still have to go through clinical trials, which is going to take 6 to 8 months because a clinical trial is a randomized field test in which you take a group of people who have the disease, and on random assignments, some get the treatment of the medicine and some do not. They get a placebo. They don't know that they're not getting the medicine, and you see the effects to do a statistical test at the end to see if there's a significant difference between the two groups. And if there is, you can attribute it to the treatment. You also then want to find out additional side effects or other questions. You're basically defeating the null hypothesis that there is no difference. So statistically, you have to show that there is more than a standard deviation or 2 standard deviations of difference in the mean of the test group placebo and the test group getting the treatment. It's a complicated process. It's scientifically, it's statistics 101 for anyone who's taken a statistics course in college. But the point is, it takes time. And when President Trump said there is this hydroxychloroquine that has used for decades for malaria, and it appears to be in France where there have been some clinical tests of it, although limited, possibly not scientifically valid, and there is some clinical experience in there, and also in Spain, and some doctors in the United States are now beginning to report clinical experience with hydroxychloroquine, and it seems to work. Now, that's not yet an approval, but since the drug is not going to hurt you taken responsibly, it's been around for so many decades. If you go to a doctor and the doctor prescribes it, why shouldn't you have the drug if you want to try it?
It was
and
just
President
amazing.
Trump
They came out against him right away. Anything that Trump likes, the mainstream news hates.
Well,
we're almost out of time here.
Jason, one more thing. You can buy this drug for about $5, and Big Farm, which wants to sell this other drug for who knows how much money, doesn't want this disease to go away with a pill that costs pennies.
It's a good point, Dr. Corsi. Kelly is watching us in Periscope. She's suggesting that we're in the midst of a continuity of government exercise. I think we're going to have to discuss that when we transition over to our sponsor exclusive segment on patreon.com/Jerome Corsi, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And we're also both on Subscribestar. People can tune in on subscribestar.com/Jerome Corsi or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Doctor, we'll be back in just 10 minutes to continue the in-depth conversation about this and other topics.
Look forward to it. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Doctor, and thanks everyone for watching.